So Donald Trump met with Republican members of Congress in the D.C. area this week, which is like pollen for allergy sufferers, right? Those with Trump derangement syndrome predictably went off the wall. How dare this threat to democracy return to the center of democracy? Different versions of what was discussed and what Trump did or didn't say have been fodder for the media. So let's find out from somebody who was actually in the room, and that would be Oklahoma Representative Kevin Hern. Congressman, good to have you.
It's great to be with you.
So tell us about the gathering. Was it cordial? Was it all business? I mean, what happened?
Well, I wish all Americans could know President Trump like we in the room know President Trump when we were there. He is an everyday person just like the rest of us. He talked about what he sees on the campaign trail, and that's the reason he has such large gatherings is because so many people can relate to what he's saying. And, you know, he compared his campaign stops to Joe Biden's, who can't seem to know what side of the stage to get off on and reads the teleprompter literally word for word. You imagine what happened if you did that. This guy, meaning Joe Biden, has just completely lost his way. And President Trump was talking about the great policies he had. He wants to restart those, that the things like sealing our southern border, things that Joe Biden completely undid. And we got 10 million people in America.
So clear up what's being reported that Trump supposedly called Milwaukee a horrible city, which, of course, where the Republican National Convention is in a couple of weeks in July. I know what he meant if he said that, by the way, because, I mean, crime is out of control in Milwaukee and many of our major cities. Of course, that's what he meant if he did say it. But you tell us what he did or didn't say.
Well, what he talked about was a lot of cities and urban areas and people in the urban areas. I just saw an interview a little while ago about Chicago and the shootings there. The large cities in America are just simply not safe anymore. I look at what's happened in New York and what's happened there with the governor and what she's allowed to have happen, condoned by Democrats. I mean, that is, we see it every day, regardless of if it's the mainstream media or, our friends like yourself. I mean, people are reflecting on what they're seeing, and they're very concerned about their safety and health. And that's what he was talking about. And we're leading into going to the convention. And he said, Wisconsin is, Milwaukee is no different than any other big city. It's got a real crime problem.
It certainly does. So the January 6th riot, along with racism and abortion, that's the entire Democratic playbook. It's all they got. So as soon as Trump set foot in D.C., this ad went up.
On January 6th, Donald Trump lit a fire in this country.
140 officers were injured. The siege lasted for 7 hours.
There is nothing more sacred than our democracy, but Donald Trump's ready to burn it all down.
Donald, by the way, the voiceover guy didn't even sound convincing. Nancy Pelosi got an assist from Liz Cheney in attacking Trump and any Republican who went to the meeting. They are so melodramatic, so over the top, and literally, as I mentioned, Congressman, that's it. That's all they got. Are they going to defend the violence in Milwaukee? Go ahead.
Well, certainly the Democrats are living in the past. They're living in the current times where we have runaway inflation. We have energy policy that makes our allies depend on people like Russia and the Middle East. And then certainly we see the foreign policy aspects of Joe Biden's agenda, which is, I guess, chaos around the world. And somehow that's okay. The media needs to start reporting what's going on right now. President Trump focused on the future. That's what the American people want to see, is a better future. They're very concerned, not by what happened, last week in, some places around the world, but for the future of America. And that's what he again said last Thursday, which was how we're going to get America back on track, why it was so important that members of Congress worked to make sure we kept the majority, and why it was important for him to be back in the White House. Because we know in Washington, D.C., we've seen it time and time again, the biggest changes you can make in the shortest period of time is when the White House, the House, and the Senate are of the same party. Sometimes that's great. Sometimes that's not so great in the case of Obamacare.
So I want to get to something you're sponsoring, and it's important. China is dangling big bucks and infiltrating its culture and ideology into our schools. So tell me about the Protect Our Kids Act that is legislation you're sponsoring.
Yeah, essentially what that does, it tells the schools out there, K through 12, to get China out of your classrooms. We'll give you a year to do it, not only through direct intervention by the Confucius Institutes, the Confucius Classroom Group, but even third-party folks that are contracting to do that. Back about 6 years ago, the State Department under them, Mike Pompeo, found that the Confucius Institutes that were in higher learning were going and paying professors to do research at our universities and send the white papers from those universities directly to Communist China first, before we saw them as a national security problem. You know, what happened was he and Betsy DeVos pushed hard to get those out of the higher institutes, higher learning institutes, and we did that. Now they've gone into our most vulnerable children, the K through 12, and trying to, make them believe that, the imprisonment of 1 million Uyghurs, Muslim Uyghurs, the castrations and things they're doing is okay. The attack on Taiwan, a group of people who want to be sovereign, who want to be a free market country, not something that's, this controlled by China. TikTok, which is going and invading their very own privacy so that they know everything about the individual. And that's what they're teaching institutions. When this first came out about 20 years ago, when these institutions started getting into our K through 12, I think everybody in America, myself included, thought that was really a great thing, that our kids were going to learn about China and Chinese language. But what we've seen very quickly is that's not what it was about. It was about weaponizing their involvement in our schools.
Yep. Well, good luck with the legislation. Congressman Kevin Hern from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and happy Father's Day to you.
Thank you very much, and to you as well.
Thank you.